G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my full Battleground season preview for the upcoming season 19 of Battlegrounds that will be starting tomorrow. So I'm just going to be covering the victory track in this video and also the first 2 weeks of Gladiator Circuit because they're pretty similar. So let's look at the nodes. So we've got Cosmic Shatter. So Cosmics have basically a 50% chance to armor break on any light attack and 100% if it's critical. So they're going to be getting lots of armor breaks on the defender. For the defender side, they get armor up buffs when they hit your block, and in circuit as well when they block your attacks. So there's gonna be a lot of armor ups going on. So we want to be using cosmics as attackers mostly, but I will be covering the best attackers, the best defenders, and also the best mastery setups. So we'll get into the attackers first. So obviously when we see a node called Cosmic Shatter, when it says cosmics, when it's going to encourage cosmics, right? So I'm going to talk about the best cosmics for this meta, I think. So there's really not going to be any terrible ones. There's really cosmics are just going to be really good in general for this meta, just because of how they benefit so much from this node, right? They're going to get 20% armor breaks, half of their light attacks, and probably more than that, more than half of their light attacks, given depending on how much they crit. And so these guys are going to be really good. So obviously the usual suspects for cosmics are just going to be even better. Champions like Cosmic Ghost Rider has armor breaks as well in his kit. They're just going to get even better. Hercules, of course, he crits a lot from after he gets his precision from his special one. Hulkling has incredible damage, even more damage with it because it's going to scale really well with armor breaks. I'm not too sure about Corvus. His damage does scale really well with armor breaks, but it's going to be a bit iffy. It's going to be someone I'm going to have to test with Corvus. I don't know yet. He could work, but he also could definitely not work at all, depending on the how much reach he has. Really, someone who's going to be really powerful this meta is Gallon, because obviously whenever the opponent gets an armor up buff, he gets, was it 50 harvest? Where is it? Yeah. Gallon also gains 50 planetary mass whenever the opponent gains an armor up effect. So it's not even just buffs, it's also passives as well. So 50 basically 50 mass whenever he blocks an attack. That's ridiculous. It's going to fast track his ramp so much. Gallon is going to be a ridiculous attacker this meta. There's also champions that have armor shattered inbuilt into their kit. Medusa and Vision Arcus are the two that come to mind when you think of armor shattered, right? Because when the opponent gets armor shattered, Medusa can get it from a special one, or even just getting 6 armor breaks, and Vision Arcus can get it from a special 2. So when they have 6 armor breaks, they get a 20. So for Medusa, it's a 26-second armor shattered, where they just can't get armor ups. And the only downside with armor up with Medusa here is that they can't get additional armor break debuffs, so it's kind of capped out once you get the armor shattered. But obviously when she's fighting robots, she gets that minus 100% combat power rate and also ability accuracy. So Medusa and Vision Arcus, they definitely won't be the strongest, but they'll definitely be alright. But obviously there's plenty of other cosmics that will work fine. Van in the Dark, he gets extra burst damage on his special 2 per armor up buff on the opponent, right? His toxic armor, striking an opponent that has toxic armor deals up to 90% additional direct damage based on how high the opponent's armor is. So one of the nodes is increased potency of armor, enhanced armor ups. So the defender's armor up buffs gain 40% potency. So if you can stack up a bunch of armor ups and just hit them with medium attacks, you don't want to armor break them, you get a bunch of damage on your special 2. And that's similar with a few other champions. Like I already talked about Gallon, who benefits from armor ups. But there's also the Serpent. So Serpent, he's such a good defender, so you probably may not want to use him for attack too much. But Serpent special 2, so his projectile hits in his special 2, they actually gain up to, the projectile hits deal a burst of direct damage, and direct damage is unaffected by armor rating, and it's multiplied by 250% of the opponent's armor rating. So again, similar to Van in the Dark and Gallon, this guy benefits so much from the opponent having a lot of armor ups. So yeah, it's important to know how your champions operate when it comes to armor ups, if they really benefit from those. Because basically armor ups they reduce incoming damage. That's just what they do, but they don't reduce any direct damage, and they also don't reduce damage over time. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'll keep talking about the cosmics. Because some other ones, obviously Ronin will be a really powerful attacker, similar to last meta. It's just like Van of the Dark, you probably just want to keep medium attacks going with him, but you can keep them definitely permanently stun locked once they get a few buffs, because they're just because he has increased stun duration per active buff effect. That's not unique buffs, that's just per buff. And so, yeah, you can see for this 5-star, stun debuffs also gain a 0.65 second duration increase for each buff the opponent has. So you can just easily, spam a special one and keep them stun locked for the entire fight and get heaps of damage. So Ronin's definitely an option there. And then the other ones that just do really well in general, that will get extra, that will do really well as, they can hit really hard. They'll hit even more with that armor, with those armor rakes. Adam Warlock, maybe Odin, Angela, for sure, Thor, for sure, Gamora, absolutely, Venom, absolutely, Silver Surfer. These champions will just get even better than they already are. So definitely stack your deck full of mystics, because they're just going to be so powerful if they can armor break the opponent. Alright, the next category of attackers I want to talk about are mystics. Because the opponents will be getting armor up buffs, it's important to not only just have cosmics at your disposal. You want to have mystics that can also handle the opponents that maybe the cosmics can't. Champions that will be able to buff control the opponent, control the amount of armor buffs they get, and also benefit from mystic dispersion and stuff like that, and also being able to nullify or neutralize those buffs. So Doctor Doom can benefit so much from nullifying buffs. It can help his rotation. Tigra can neutralize those armor up buffs and get even more rupture damage. The Hood can fate seal the opponent from a special 2, and so if they have several armor up buffs and you fate seal with a special 2, you can almost get back to a second special 2 straight away. So he'll be really good. Obviously Juggernaut can just, if he's awakened, he can nullify armor up buffs when he has unstoppables, or he can even stagger with his heavy attack. Chavez, she benefits so much from the opponents having buffs, that contributes to her dimensional energy infusion for each unique parallel dimension and each buff on the opponent. She gets extra attack rating, so it won't be amazing because the armor up buffs do still reduce her damage. There's no way she has no way around the actual armor apart from critical hits, because critical hits can ignore some of the armor. But yeah, she'll still be hitting like an absolute truck. And then there's other ones, Longshot, of course. If you've got a max Sig Longshot, he can just straight up nullify opponents' armor up buffs when they get them, and replace it with bad karma. So that just feeds his ramp and just gets to a special 2 even quicker. Scarlet Witch Sigil, she's able to just, whenever she parries, where's mine? Whenever she parries, she can just nullify buffs. So that, again, similar to Longshot, so that just feeds MD and just gets her to those specials even quicker. Where is it? Yeah, while blocking, 15% chance to nullify one buff increased to 100% chance during the well-timed block window. So yeah, really easy access to nullify there. Another interesting one will be Morningstar. So Morningstar can deal bursts of energy damage on her special 2, and also nullify the buffs, which also feeds MD. So yeah, each hit this attack deals bonus energy damage per buff when this attack is triggered, and that's per hit. So and a special 2 has 3 hits that can definitely scale to a lot of damage if they have the max of 10 armor ups. And then also Dr. Voodoo, it would be an interesting left field one. So he can obviously use the opponent's buffs against them. He also places his own sort of placebo buffs. I can't remember what they're called. The lowers, yeah, the lower buffs. So he can, convert those to poisons, or, use them to power drain the opponent. So yeah, extra buffs on the opponent is just really good for Dr. Voodoo. And another interesting one, so a new champion, is Destroyer. So Destroyer, I think has the potential to actually be the best dual threat in the game in this upcoming meta. And I'll talk about why when I get to the defenders, but I'll just focus him on as attacker for now. Where is my Destroyer? There he is. So Destroyer, basically whenever the opponent hits his block, he removes the buffs that they have, one of their newest buffs, and replaces it with a Rabble buff. You can see here when the opponent gains a buff while attacking the destroyer's block, which is what happens in this node. When they attack your block, they get an armor up. He just destroys that and replaces it with a Rabble buff, and that just feeds his ramp. And he also gets protection, reduces damage taken by 5% for each buff. That's a max of 25%. It's just really, really good for destroyer. And it can also put a hinder buff, debuff on the opponent that reduces their armor rating, their armor up potency by 75%. So yeah, it's just really, really nice way to increase this guy's ramp up. And also, I'm not sure if destroying the buff feeds the Mystic Dispersion. I'm not a destroyer player, but if someone does know that, let me know in the comments. So yeah, that's sort of like the mystics that you want to be considering, because you don't want to just fill your deck with just cosmics. You definitely want to have a little bit of flexibility there. You don't want to just be spamming cosmics on attack. You definitely want a bit of range there. Now the next category I'll talk about is, and probably the final category I'll talk about, is damage over time based champions. So I already mentioned earlier, damage over time completely ignores armor rating. That's any damage over time. So bleed, poison, shock, rupture, incinerate, degeneration, power sting, all of this ignores armor rating. It just does not care. So you want to have champions that have access to damage over time. So when you're fighting champions that are gaining a lot of those armor ups by hitting a block, you want to be able to just ignore that armor rating at all whatsoever. So damage over time. First champion that comes to mind is Kate Bishop. So Kate Bishop is just going to be able to ignore this whole meta pretty much. She's just not going to care. It's not really going to affect her too much at all. So the cold snaps are not going to be affected at all by the opponent's armor rating. So she's just going to melt opponents like she normally does. Another one is Scorpions. A Scorpion, his power stings, their damage over time. They do count as damage over time, and also his personal debuffs like poisons and shocks. The actual damage isn't affected by armor rating either. So similar to Kate Bishop, he's not really going to be affected at all from this. Shuri is another really nice one. Because she gets that really potent damage over time, but she can also, when she throws that special one, she can get those critical shocks, and crits largely ignore armor rating as well. So when she gets those guaranteed crits, she's going to ignore a large portion of the opponent's armor rating and just be able to melt them down like she normally does. So this is just you just want to use good champions, just really good solid damage over time. Omega Red, Nick Fury, Archangel. Probably Onslaught would be a really nice one to have as well. Human Torch for those Mystic Defenders. Black Cat if you need someone that can reduce your ability accuracy reduction and just not care about armor rating. Black Cat is definitely one of those ones. Joe Fixer on his special one can get really, really potent bleed damage. Spot, when his rupture damage, his instant rupture damage from his Sig ability, all of this doesn't care about armor rating at all. And then another one is Ironheart. So Ironheart, she gets those repulsor debuffs. They just don't care about armor rating, and also her burst damage from her special attacks. They don't care about armor rating as well. So yeah, definitely consider adding some damage over time champions to your deck when it comes to some more troublesome defenders that maybe your cosmics aren't too strong for. You definitely want to have, like I said, in the Mystic section, you definitely want to have a bit of flexibility when it comes to your attackers. So that's going to sort of cover it for the attacker section. The one thing I will say is there's really not too many champions that will be bad for this attacker-wise. The only ones you kind of want to avoid are champions that have a very block-happy playstyle. Champions like Bishop, Mr. Fantastic, Guardian, Iron Man, Emma Frost in a diamond form, Captain America Infinity War. These champions are not really suited for this meta, just because they're so block happy, and they're also, a lot of their attacks are their raw damage from basic attacks. They're not gonna like high armor rating too much. So those sort of champions you kind of want to avoid. But it's more about a playstyle that you want to aim for. You want to aim for a loose playstyle with intercepts, special punishes, heavy punishes. Champions like Silk, Photon, Kitty Pryde, Future Ant-Man, Massacre, Red Guardian, Spider-Punk, Titania, Nova. These champions can really be flexible a lot. They can play around the opponent and not have to block too much. And so those champions will also do really well without being a really good cosmic or a really good mystic or have really good damage over time. They can still do really well despite that. So it's more about aiming for a playstyle. And then another thing I want to potentially suggest for you is just stat focuses for your 7 stars. So normally, a lot of your 7 stars you'll probably have precision as the offensive stat focus, but you might want to consider for champions that aren't, cosmics or mystics, maybe running armor penetration. I haven't actually done the math on this yet, but being able to ignore a percentage of the opponent's armor rating on top of your critical hits and stuff could be really nice. So I might make this switch for some of my champions, and instead of running crit rating, maybe run armor penetration for a bit. But I'm not too sure yet. I haven't done the math. I'll have to test which one is more effective. But yeah, that's going to cover it for the attackers for this part of the video. Alright guys, now on to the defenders. These are the champions that you want to be placing down so your opponent will have the most difficult time, which is obviously something we all enjoy. So this is going to be tricky because there's really not going to be too many amazing defenders because this is such a cosmic happy meta. There's a lot of cosmics like Gallon that are just going to be able to take anyone, and he doesn't care. Like, no matter who the defender is, he's really not going to care about what the champion's abilities are. He's just going to be able to nuke them. But obviously, there's still going to be some defenders that will do better than normal. So we'll talk about those now. Because this is a cosmic based meta, naturally they're strong against techs, but also the nodes naturally benefit techs as well. So if you're in a situation where your opponent does not have too many cosmic attackers and you're able to draft a lot of tech defenders, it's good to consider drafting them because one of the nodes is enhanced armor ups. The defender's armor up buffs gain 40% potency, and that's not just the armor up buffs from the node. That's also just natural armor up buffs. So it's important to maybe consider having champions that have natural armor up buffs. So I'll probably thinking of champs like Future Ant-Man is naturally a good defender anyway, but his armor up buffs will be more potent. Warlock, he reduces. He can make sure that the opponent's the opponent's special attacks don't crit when he has that armor up buff. Iron Man is a naturally tanky defender, so he's going to be even more tanky with that extra armor up potency. Red Skull, of course, when you talk about armor ups, one of the first champs that come to mind is Red Skull defensively. Nimrod is not the defender he once was, for sure, but his armor up buffs, he doesn't really get affected by armor breaks at all. The armor breaks suffer minus 100% potency, so he could be a really nice just counter. Obviously, Gallon, Van the Duck will still work for him, and probably Serpent, but a lot of armor breaks won't affect him, and obviously all armor breaks won't affect him. So he could be a sneaky good defender in the right situation. So there's not too many defenders tech-wise that gain a huge benefit from the enhanced armor up node, but it's definitely worth considering when you're adding champions to your deck. But the next category I'll talk about is champs that are actually immune to armor break, because cosmics will be really strong this meta, but they'll be even stronger if they can armor break the defender. But if they can't armor break the defender, that definitely resets them back to ground zero, for sure. So if you can have champions in your deck that are immune to armor breaks and potentially benefit from armor break immunity, that's also really nice. So one of the first champions that comes to mind when I think of armor break immunity is Absorbing Man, because not only is he armor break immune, but whenever someone tries to put an armor break on him, where is it? He pauses his form. Whenever a buff ends on the opponent or Absorbing Man is immune to a debuff, the current form pauses for 3 seconds. Now, obviously, this will not happen if he's been deactivated, but when he is in a form, definitely makes it trickier for the opponent. And then another champion that comes to mind when I think of armor break immunity is Colossus. So unless someone's using a tech attacker against this guy's completely immune to armor break and armor shattered. So he naturally gets a lot of armor up buffs. Those will get increased potency. So yeah, that will just make him even more tanky. And if you can't armor break him, it's gonna definitely be a sort of a stall for some cosmic attackers. Definitely can help you win on time potentially. Obviously, Dr. Doom is an amazing champion who's armor break immune, so he could be a really nice dual threat. I think this meta, probably not as good as some other champions, but he'll still be nuked by certain science champions. But with all that crit resistance and armor break immunity, You know, the only cosmic that can really take this guy is probably Gallon. So he's really definitely gonna be a trap for certain people for sure. Another champion I'll sort of mention is Lady Deathstrike. So she actually does get armor break immunity. I didn't actually know this until I started making this video. But when she gets her nanobots during the opponent's special attacks, she actually disables. Becomes immune to armor break, but that doesn't happen if she doesn't have a personal armor up. So she can definitely still be nuked by cosmic attackers. But you know, yeah, she is definitely going to be a stall if you don't have a cosmic attacker. So definitely a sneaky good defender, but not amazing, I don't think. But then another one is obviously, if we go back to the Mystics, we go Man Thing is going to be a really interesting one because, you know, he's made a mush, so he's immune to armor break, but also he prevents critical hits from dealing bonus damage. And so if you know, preventing those hits from dealing bonus damage, and also you got that high armor rating, that's just going to make it even more tricky to get this guy down in a quick amount of time. Unless you're using someone, I don't know, like Human Torch, or someone who can, you know, super poison immune that can really bypass a lot of his armor, and armor break immunity and stuff. But yeah, this guy could be definitely a sneaky good one. Obviously, I have to say it, Gallon will still work for him, but yeah, but Gallon was not immune to poison, so he can still definitely do a bit of chit damage to Gallon when a lot of other champions can't. Another one in the Mystic class is Mangog. So Mangog is also armor break immune, and you know, he's not the most tanky guy in the world, but he can definitely stall a lot of cosmic attackers, in particular with the armor break immunity. And you know, the only real weaknesses he has is those hard hitting science champions like Silk and Hulk and Titania. So obviously those will still work for him, but yeah, another one is Thing. So Thing, not only is he armor break immune, but he's also nullify and shatter immune. So champions like a lot of Mystics won't be able to work for him. They won't be able to remove his armor up buffs. And so yeah, the only real way to control his armor ups will be Tigra or like champions that neutralize. Obviously Gallon will work, but yeah, he's definitely be a really nice solid defender this meta with our armor break immunity and also nullify immunity. And then the last one I'll talk about, I mentioned it before as an attacker, Destroyer I think is going to have the potential to be a really solid dual threat this season, potentially the best one. And the reason I'll talk about him as a defender is because, well, there's several reasons. Well, the main reason actually is this. So when struck, inflict an instant rupture, dealing 40% of the damage prevented by personal protection as physical damage. And so that's going to happen whenever the opponent has a buff. So cosmic attackers, any cosmic attacker that has a buff will definitely take instant rupture damage. You know, the only ones that cannot take instant damage if they have a buff are champions with rupture immunity, and there are not many of those in the game. So obviously, he's still going to be destroyed by certain, you know, science champions like Scorpion, Hulk, Silk, Photon. That's obviously inevitable. Like, every champion has their weaknesses, but he's going to be a really good trap for a lot of people because he has that instant rupture damage. He has the destroy ability that can convert buffs to rubble, that works both offensively and defensively. He gets that protection when the opponent has buffs. He has armor break immunity, and he gets 2 destruction charges when immunity to armor break triggers when the opponent gains a buff. And so that's just going to fast track his ramp even more. And you know, if he gets to 100 charges, destruction charges, that's where he gets his 4 bars of power, which is really scary if you're fighting him as a defender. So Destroyer is going to be really nice. And obviously, you know, it's tricky to intercept him as well. So, you know, you're forced to block a lot of the time because he gets that passive unstoppable when he dashes forward. So definitely going to be a really nice dual threat, I think, this season. And then the last category I'll sort of talk about is champions that just have undexable specials or partially undexable specials. So when I talk about undexable specials, obviously the first champions that come to mind are Bullseye and Serpent. Bullseye, his special one is completely like, I don't know, I've seen a dex of it, but it's very tricky to pull off. Most, like 99.9% of the community cannot do it, which is fair enough. And then Serpent, obviously, when he gets that True Focus buff, he just turns off dexing. You just can't dex his specials when he has True Focus. So unless you're using someone like Tigra that can neutralize that buff, he's going to be a real pain in the ass, and going to be even tankier than normal. Some other champions that I debated putting in this category or not were like Nick Fury. The special one, if he throws that into your block, that's a lot of armor ups. But there's not really too many champions that have like 2 undexable specials. So I didn't really know how to fill this category. I sort of put Quicksilver here just because his specials can sort of catch you. If you block that special 2, that's a lot of armor up buffs he can get. Another one is Dust. Her special 1's pretty easy to dex, but her special 2 you can't really fully dex, so that's just a few armor up buffs there. It's not a category that you really want to be searching for as champions that have really hard to dex specials, because a lot of champions do have specials that are at least one special that is quite easy to dex, with the exception of Serpent or Bullseye. So yeah, that's going to sort of cover it for the defenders. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hopefully this gets the ball rolling in your head about what you think will be working for this meta. But yeah, let's go over to the masteries. All right, guys, onto the mastery setups. This will be a sort of recommendation for what I think will be the best masteries for this meta. This is not really there's not really any nodes that demand certain masteries at all. So I'm going to be rolling with a pretty standard setup, but I will bring up one feature that you might want to consider when it comes to mastery. So offense, what I'm currently running with here is a pretty standard, first tree here with precision and cruelty. You definitely want to keep those both maxed out. Here I've got 3 out of 3 despair, because 3 out of 3 despair is just a staple with battlegrounds, I think, offensively and defensively. I've just got 1 point deep wounds right now. I'll touch on that in a sec as to why. But in defense, this is a pretty standard setup just to get that 15 points in defense. I always run 5 out of 5 stand your ground just to catch those defenders that are very heavy happy. In case your defenders do block and they can resist that block break with a 50% chance at 5 out of 5. Always on 1 out of 3 willpower, because that's the best bang for your buck. And then I've also got 3 out of 3 inequity, because champions with defenders like Photon and Havoc, they can reduce the opponent's attack rating per debuff they have. So that can definitely help with those defenders. And then the proficiencies is really standard. You always want to run 5 out of 5 limber, so your defenders, when your opponent stun your defenders, that stun lasts for a super short time. And then obviously we want to run 5 out of 5 Mystic Dispersion for your Mystic attackers and also Mystic defenders. Mystics are going to be really good dual threats this season, I think, in particular. So yeah, the one thing I want to bring up, that I want to talk about in this part of the video, is Coltech versus Deep Wound. So I think this is where I'm not sure which way I want to go. It's either I can go 5 out of 5 Coltech, or I can go 5 out of 5 collar. Sorry, I can go 5 out of 5 collar tech and 1 out of 5 deep wounds, or I can go no collar tech, 5 out of 5 deep wounds, and 1 in assassin. So it's kind of what you want to value more. Which one you think will be more useful for you? Because collar tech, you can reduce the opponent's combat power rate by 18%. That's all your tech champions. So if you think about your tech defenders, slowing down your cosmics, the cosmic opponents, is gonna be really nice, and it's gonna make champions like Cosmic Ghost Rider and Hulkling, champions that have a really solid rotation, gonna make it harder for them to pull off that rotation if you can reduce their combat power rate. Obviously gonna nuke anyway, but if you can shave a few seconds off, that can be really nice. And then obviously that can be used offensively as well if you're using tech attackers like Future Ant-Man or Warlock, stuff like that. And then obviously Deep Wounds is an amazing mastery. This is a mastery I run most metas, and I'm sort of torn which one I want to run most. So it's kind of like what you value more. Do you value your tech defenders, or do you value your bleed based attackers? So for me personally, I'm probably going to be running Warlock, Future Ant-Man, Arcade, Iron Man, Shuri, Red Skull. That's like 6 tech defenders that can be used as defenders, that can really benefit from collar tech and can slow the opponents down. But then on the other hand, I've got bleed based attackers. I've probably got like Nick Fury, Archangel, Black Cat, Joe Fixit, Warlock, and I think there was another one. that I can't remember right now. So that's like 5 or 6 as well. So it's kind of like the which one do you value more? Or I could split it, like maybe run 3 out of 5 color tech, and then I don't know 3 out of 5 deep wounds. So it's kind of like what do you value more? So I could run definitely both of them, or it's probably makes more. It's probably I probably will end up running just 5 out of 5 deep wounds and one assassins because the assassins benefits everyone as well. But I'm still not undecided. But that's definitely color tech is definitely one to consider. Definitely for your tech defenders this meta. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me this video. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you guys got a few ideas about what you want to put considering for your decks. But good luck for the upcoming season. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.